So I love these questions because um because I found a formula that tends to answer. I think that's my favorite reason. So generally this is probably the second or third video of this nature that I've done because I'm just once again pointing it out. What I tend to see is that whenever anybody says everybody hates me or I can't, especially if they say I have problems making friends, making and keeping friends, then I say to myself, that sounds like Moon Mars, right? Moon is the mind. Moon is our reflex, how we tend to act. It's what Bonatti calls our non-rational mind, right? So it's kind of what's just in there and kind of acting itself out. And then Mars, of course, is contention, right? Contention, violence. I mean, it can all good things too, courage and valor and all that stuff. But contention is a major aspect of Mars. So if a person can't keep a friend, right? Not keeping a relationship is one thing. That can be around about all kinds of things. But a person can't keep a friend, more than likely contention is in there, right? So more than likely there's an aspect that about them that is contentious. In the spirit of Mars, I feel the necessity to be contentious in a response and to answer their question from that particular place. So the first thing that we would be looking for is there a connection between the moon and Mars? And what we see, of course, is that the moon is in Capricorn, which is the exaltation of Mars. So Mars is part ruler, has rulership of right. Saturn and Mars have the main rulership over Capricorn. So basically, yes. And then we see that the next application that the moon is making to Mars making is to Mars, rather. So it's a sextile, which should be a good aspect, right? And so, right, we've talked about this before too, right? That how the terms were not necessarily good or bad, they were hard versus easy, right? And so that means that the sextile and the trine, which would be considered easy, can make negative things happen just as easily as they can make good things happen easily. So something to think about. So, and then also we know from having worked with the ideas about reception that not all trines and sextiles are created equal, which also means not all squares are malefic. All most oppositions are at least, super challenging, shall we say, but not all squares are malefic. But to that end, not all trines and sextiles are fully benefic. And so that's what we're going to look at here in this particular case. Because Mars, as ruler over the moon, is also partially ruler of the 12th house. Note also that Saturn is the ruler of the first and the 12th. Now, the 12th, why were you looking at that? Because, of course, the 12th house is the house of self undoing, right? And this person is actually really asking about that on a certain level. I mean, they're asking about the seventh house friendship, relationship, and the 11th house friendship, but they're really asking about why they can't make that happen, which means there's something in them, or why they can't sustain that, right? Or keep that from not happening, which means there's something in them that is, they're looking to see that if there is something in them, which in my opinion there probably is. So then the next thing that I would be looking at is the nature of this sextile, right? So we just said that the moon is in the exaltation of Mars and it's applying to Mars. And so we were just talking about this concept of reception. And so we know that when planet A is in the rulership or exaltation of planet B and applying to planet B, that they are pushing nature onto planet B. And so in this particular case, the moon is in the exaltation of Mars. The moon is applying to the sextile of Mars. That means that the moon is pushing nature onto Mars. Mars himself is in his own sign of Capricorn, of Scorpio, excuse me. And so that in itself is really important because that means that this reception is mixed, right? Because now that means that the moon is pushing exaltation onto Mars, but Mars is in the fall of the moon. So Mars receives the moon, but the moon can't really fully receive Mars, even though she's in his exaltation, and his exaltation is her detriment. So the moon's in her detriment in the 12th house. So already we know there's an issue, right? Moon and detriment in the 12th house. Um, Moon is about the flow of emotions, right? Cold and wet. And we know that Capricorn is cold and dry, right? It can dry those emotions right out. Also, Saturn himself is also cold and dry. So this kind of chills this person's emotional responses down already, right? So that's just kind of shall we say a climate, a climatological way of looking at it at the moment. And so we can say that that probably is one of the issues, is that there might be a chill to how this person deals with other people and deals with their own emotions, if they even allow them to happen. The fact that Mars is in Scorpio, Scorpio is the fall of the moon, right? So, so also that would be more inhibition of that, and more need to control, possibly to control the environment or others as a result of this, right? So the other thing that I tend to see a lot with Scorpio is very, very, very agenda oriented. So having a very specific idea and a specific agenda, and really doing whatever it takes to get to the end goal, like end in sight always. And so that, as the governor of the moon, which is our thinking, our mind, etc., this person might be extremely goal oriented and not really as good with people. And that, in my opinion, shows also here with the Saturn who's in Leo, which, and I call Saturn in Leo misanthropic. It doesn't, it tends to often find itself feeling better than others, not really liking others, and acting as though it were better than others, right? Already the issue with Leo is arrogance and pride, and royalty, right? Leo, ruled by the sun, represents royalty. So tends to be kind of at its worst. Saturn in Leo can be very, like I say, misanthropic, and and feel superior to others. So, and then note also here, and this is the person themselves, right? So the moon and the ruler, the ascendant, we're talking about the actual person themselves. So note also that the Saturn is in square to Mars that we've also been talking about. And Mars already is, as I mentioned, contentions, right? A square is already challenging. Mars is contentious. So this looks like a very, very focused person, a person very focused on their personal agenda, who may possibly already have difficulties kind of emotionally relating, being fully empathetic, so even though, look, we've got the part of fortune in Pisces, almost everything's in Capricorn, Leo, Sagittarius, or Scorpio, right? So the important planets that we're really looking at are can be quite cold and chill and calculating and transactional. And especially your Capricorn is very much, how can I make this work for me? How can I use that, right? And Scorpio as well. How will this get me to the end goal? So I think that there's possibly a lack of consideration generally that might be happening, a lack of consideration for others, uh, because there might be a specific goal of sorts. And note also that the Saturn that we're talking about, who's the ruler of the ascendant, is in the seventh house, so that when the relationships are activated, right? So when relationships are activated, the seventh house, then that Saturn becomes activated. And of course, the Saturn is the ruler of the first, the person themselves, but it's the ruler of the 12th, the negative, the what do they call, the self-undoing, right? So that means that these particular aspects of the person will show up the more intimate the relationship gets, the more these, and Saturn is alienation. So more than likely, these alienating tactics, or not tactics, but actions will show up more and more with as the person gets closer and closer. Intimate relationships will bring them. And of course, what happens to a planet that comes within 8 degrees of the sun? it burns, right? So they end up, and so there should be an interesting kind of dichotomy that may happen in the relationship side, right? We just kind of talked about like maybe why this person can't find a friend. It looks like they may have difficulty actually really connecting with people and really finding any empathy, finding some sympathy, finding even being interested in other people's stories or things, right? On the other side, when we're looking at this seventh house relationship thing, we're noting that the Saturn is there, and Saturn is also the killjoy. Saturn is no. Saturn is the immovable object, right? So those types of things might show up. No, we can't do that. No, I don't want to go there. When we get there, they're no fun. They complain the entire time. They think they're better than everybody around them. They don't like they don't like the friend group. They might not say anything, but they have an attitude the entire time, and nobody can enjoy themselves. Right? We can't have fun when they come in. We can't play that game. They don't like that game, right? It would be that kind of a way that Saturn could kill joy, more than likely. And it's not something you're necessarily doing, quote, on purpose or shall we say even consciously, but that's kind of how it's constellated. So once again, the closer somebody comes to you, the more that particular type of thing will show, the freer you'd feel to show to unfortunately show it. And then of course the irritability with the Mars with the Mars square is part of the problem as well. The last thing I want to say is that I think that this person is very future dream oriented. And I think that is also a part of the problem because, as I mentioned earlier, I think that this person may not find people who aren't doing the same thing as they are as interesting, or may not be as interested in other people, or may not be as interested in people who don't have a specific dream or whatever. So the way that I'm thinking about this is the reason I'm thinking about this is first of all that Mars is the ruler of the 10th. In his own sign, not within 5 degrees, but close, getting close to the cusp of the 10th. The ruler of the part of fortune is in the 10th with the sun. Of course, the sun is already about exposure and visibility. Right. So there's and the sun rules the Jupiter, the Saturn and Leo. And so and with the Jupiter and the Venus here. And so I would think that there's a very public aspect to the aspiration in this chart. And I would think that maybe that might make this person feel that they are better than other people and might not be able to kind of come down to earth, right? Moon is in Capricorn, might not be able to fully come down to earth. This person may have big plans, right? Jupiter and Sagittarius are the part of fortune. So this person, and in the 10th from the part of fortune, so this person may have big plans and big plans that would make them are going to make them very visible. I don't know if it will work or not. I mean, I'm not going to go into that necessarily at the moment. But I think that this person's preoccupation is with their plans towards some kind of visibility. And I think that those things also get in the way. Note that the 11th house is the house of my future hopes and wishes and the house of friendships. So first triplicity ruler of hope, wait, is hope. Second is friends. So wait, this is daytime. So Jupiter is the ruler of friends, and note he's the one being combusted. So Jupiter is the ruler of friends and hope. But if we split it into triplicity rulership, so I'm sorry for those who don't know what I'm talking about. So triplicity is another word for element. And so every element has three planets who rule that particular element. One planet is the daytime ruler, one planet is the nighttime ruler, one planet is what they call the participator. And each house for each house rather, the three triplicity rulers can be used to significate signify, there we go, to signify different aspects of the house. So for instance, like I mentioned, the 11th house represents hopes and dreams for the future. It represents friendships as well. So both of those things. So one planet can represent hopes and dreams, one planet can represent friendships, and then the third planet represents, whatever. So in this particular case, the daytime ruler represents the hopes. The nighttime ruler represents the friendships. Okay, so the three planets are the Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn. The Sun is the daytime ruler. It's daytime. It's daytime in this chart because the Sun is above the horizon. It's close to noon. This person was born in probably just coming like maybe 11:30 or something like that, 11:45. And us, like what I say, Jupiter, right? So Jupiter is the nighttime ruler. So we've got both the friendships, but but hope is burning friendship. So and then note also that Venus is the significator for the 11th house because she rules the love between friends. So hope is burning both friendship and the natural significator for the 11th. So I think that that's probably what's going on here. This person may want to be an influencer or a journalist or not a journalist. Well, maybe because of Scorpio and investigation. Oh, my last thing I wanted to say, you might not be fully honest with people, or you might try to create an oh, that's it. You might try to create an illusion about who you are. That if you're there's a fantasy element towards the identity here. Mercury is going to the square to the Neptune here, which can you kind of loosen the sense of reality. I call it fuzzy thinking, or so there can be fuzzy thinking, fuzziness in the speech. There can be Mercury and Mars are known to kind of misbehave together, and Scorpio is mute. So this person may not be a liar, but they might be a person who tends to not say what's necessary. So they might be a person who will what is it, omit information until it's too late, and then it's found out and everybody gets angry. So I think those are the main things that I would kind of look at. Oh, what would I tell the person? I mean, I've told those are all the things I would tell them. What would I tell them? I would tell them develop empathy. Look at this part of fortune in Pisces. Why is it there? And Rahu is there as well. Yeah, so I would say your goal is to develop as much empathy as possible. Your goal is to that. I think that's the only way out for you. You don't have, um, because there's and to learn how to listen and to learn how to listen to others. Because, like I said, it doesn't seem like there's really much care for how others are. Even though, oh, the one last thing I wanted to mention, even though in relationship you might find yourself consistently acquiescing to the other and thinking that that means that's kind of how you do a relationship like that so like you might consistently defer to the other's choices, where we're going to sit, where we're going to go out, or blah blah blah. But like I said, then this killjoy thing will show up because you didn't actually really want to do that, but you let it happen anyway. And so instead you decided to kind of kill the joy of the moment because you didn't actually really deal with what it was that you didn't want to do. So that is those are, like I said, the compassion, clear up your speech, make sure that you say what needs to be said. What is it called? Full transparency. This is not a really transparent, this shows not a particularly transparent speech pattern. And yeah, that's all I got for you.